Welcome to the QuickStart guide for the iTHUMP Toxic Plus app. Now this is a two-part app with iTHUMP, which is a remote display for the calculator part of the app, and also a remote communication device or thumper, and Toxic Plus, which is my attempt to make the ultimate magic calculator. The toxic force was a mathematical trick that was achieved by typing in a mathematical formula into a calculator, but it seemed to have lots of problems. Now, a number of magicians over the years have released versions of the formula, and some have created basic calculator apps before that allowed you to force a number, but nothing really went any further than that prior to iTHUMP Toxic Plus. Now, my goal was to set out to solve all of the problems that I could see with the classic toxic force. I wanted to have a way of making sure that the app couldn't be accidentally cleared. I wanted to be able to have multiple forces. I wanted to be able to store and retrieve information that was entered in, but also to derive and calculate additional information that wasn't entered in. It was important that I could peek the entered data without taking back the phone, and also possibly use the Apple Watch. Ideally, if I could, it'd be great to use the spectator's phone. And probably the most important failing of the toxic force was to make the calculation mathematically correct. Now, one of the big criticisms of the toxic force was that the numbers really didn't add up to the number that was being revealed at the end. So that's sort of where it came from, and over the years it's developed into a much more comprehensive tool with a lot of help from some very smart people in our user group. So it's become a bit of a team effort, and hopefully it can do anything that you could imagine a calculator app could do. So with this video, we're going to get you set up and hopefully show you the basic idea of how it's put together, and then afterwards you go through the website to find out some of the more advanced features. But with this video, I'll try and just give you the basics of what you need to do to get it ready to perform, and also how to enter the information that you need. So there's a little bit of initial setup needed to get Toxic Plus ready for performance. There's you need to import some screenshots of the regular iOS calculator, and then there's 3 bits of info that you need to enter to let Toxic Plus know what you want to do. So first of all, you need to be able to enter in the number you want to force. We call it the force number, or it can work like a normal calculator if you want. Then you need to decide on what information you're going to collect from the spectator. So what information they're going to enter in, how many bits of information need to be entered before the force number is shown. And then you can decide which information you want to get out. So after you've entered in information, do you want to see everything that was entered or only a little bit, in what order and in what form? So for instance, if you were to collect somebody's birth date as a day or in a month and a year, you might want to just get their birthday. You might want to know what day they were born, how many days ago that was, how many days it is to their next or last birthday. You might want to know who the celebrity was born on the same day. You might need to know their zodiac or their Chinese zodiac or the character traits for that particular day or birthday. So there's lots of information that can be entered into the calculator to create some random type of number, and there's a lot of information that can get out. Okay, so they're the three bits of information you need to decide on: what number you're forcing, or whether it's a normal calculator, what data is going to be entered in and what type of data it'll be, and also what information and in what order you want to get it out. So there's a number of ways of getting the data out of the Toxic calculator. You can either peek it on the device if you want to take the phone back. You can have it sent to your Apple Watch if you have one. You can use the iTHUMP portion of the app to send the information to a second iPhone or iPad if you want. And you can also have it send the information to external devices like Bluetooth displays or Bluetooth earpiece if you want. So there's a lot of other more advanced features in the app which you can look into later, but for the QuickStart guide we'll just concentrate on these first 3 steps. Now the first step in setting up Toxic Plus is that we want to go and take a couple of screenshots. So the first will be a startup image that allows us to make it look like we're opening the iOS calculator from the iOS calculator icon, and then we want to take a couple of screenshots of the regular iOS calculator. Now it can be iOS 10 or even iOS 13, or you can use the custom calculators that I created that come with the app, but I'll assume that you want to make it look as real as possible. So to do that, we're going to go out of the app, and we're going to go and find the iOS calculator icon, and we're going to temporarily move it from where it is now to the second row right hand side, because when you click on the icon it's going to animate from that point and make it look like the calculator is opening. So just click and hold on the icon and drag it up into the top second row right hand side, and then press your home button or swipe up to stop it jiggling. You're going to then take a screenshot of the home screen, and then you're going to open up your iOS calculator. And when you're doing these screenshots, it's probably a good idea that you unplug it from power. I need to have it plugged in to do this video. Otherwise you'll get the little lightning bolt charging symbol, and it's also probably a good idea to be on cellular data instead of Wi-Fi, because if you're not at home at the time, you're more than likely to be on cellular data. So hit the clear button a few times, make sure you got a 0, take a screenshot of the calculator in portrait, then turn the phone horizontally and take a screenshot of the landscape mode as well. Okay, once you're done with that, you can kill off the iOS calculator and go back into iTHUMP. Now the next step is we're going to go into the Toxic Plus settings, and we're going to fill out step 1, which is custom graphics, and we're going to turn on that little startup image. So you've got an option, you can have it on or off if you don't want to use it, and hit the import button, and then we're going to go to the photos. The first time you go into photos, it probably will ask you if you want to give permission for iTHUMP to access the photos. You want to say yes, otherwise you won't be able to import the graphics. You go into your screenshot and bring in the home screen, and then you're going to click on the little portrait image and bring in the portrait graphic, and you're going to do the same with the landscape, and you're going to bring in the landscape graphic. And then really important is you need to turn on this highlight keys switch. You want all the switches on, but every time you import in a graphic it's going to have that switch off, so you need to manually do that every time. And with that switch on, it's needed for all of the graphics to animate the right way. If you don't have that on, it might not look 100%, so just remember always to do that. Okay, and that's the first step of importing in the graphics into Toxic Plus. Okay, now step number 2 in the setup for Toxic Plus is to decide what number you want to force at the end of the routine. So there's a lot of choices you have. You could choose to force like a serial number, or maybe a phone number. It could be a number that's significant to the person you're performing to. It could be the current date and time that the performance is taking place. Or you might decide that you just want to have it work like a normal calculator and create like a magic number, for instance, in numerology. But one of the unique features of Toxic Plus is the ability to set up multiple force numbers that you can have prepared, so that you at any time you can go into that force and it'll be ready to go just by opening the app. So let's go into the second setup item here, set force numbers. And you'll notice here that there is initially 10 force slots where you can decide to set up 10 different routines. Now, for every one of these force slots, you can decide what information the spectator is going to enter. And for every one of these force slots, you can decide what information you want to get out or be able to peek or hear in a Bluetooth earpiece. So at the moment I've set up 4 examples here of different routines that you could use. The first one is just using a big 9-digit number. This one is the first 9 cards in a mnemonic stack. So for instance, you could do a routine, have a deck of cards shuffled and sitting on the table. And at the end of the routine, you could then produce cards in a fancy way to match the numbers that are on the screen of this random number that the people have created. The second force would be this one's the Aronson stack, but with the Simon Aronson. This one uses Jack, Queen and King as a 1, 2 or 3 as well, so 11 for a Jack, so that'd be a 1, a 12 would be a 2 for a Queen, and a 13 would be a 3 for a King. And below that you've also got some special keywords which are book test and no force, and if you use one of those 2 keywords, the calculator will act like a normal calculator. So for instance, if you wanted to do a numerology routine where you're calculating a magic number, the calculation will be correct. So you're not actually forcing a number, but you can then use that number in numerology, or in the case of the book test where it has a special character, it can be used, the total number can be used to look up a page in a book, for instance. So for each of these force numbers, there's a little eye icon next to the to each of the slots, and if you click on that, it'll bring up a little force notes field. You can then name the force or give it a tag or a label. Mnemonica, should spell it properly, and then you can hit update, and you get to know that if you're setting up multiple forces, sometimes it's easier to have a label that gives you a reminder of what type of force it is and whether you're going to collect a birthday or 2 birthdays, or it's a lottery ticket or something like that. So giving it a label is a good idea, just as a reminder. Now, as well as the first 10 force slots, there's also 9 special forces, so that if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that there's a Facebook force, a location force, a no force, a date time force, ad hoc, confederate, replacement, face down, and there's also one called the remainder force. Now these are all advanced features of the app. And if you go through our website and have a look at the force number page, each one will have a little video and an explanation of how to use them. So we'll get back to those a little bit later. But for this quick start guide, all you need to know is that you're going to provide the number that you want to force in any one of these top 10 slots. Okay. Alright, now that we've set up the number that we want to force, the next step is we'll go out by clicking on the little cross at the top of the screen. We're going to go into step number 3, enter data fields. Now in this step we're going to decide for every one of the force slots that we have, you can decide separately what data you want to collect from the spectator, so what you want them to type in during the routine. And the number of items that you fill out into this screen will determine when the force number is shown. So for instance, in this first screen for the force number 1, we're collecting a day, a month, a year, a house number and a zip code, for instance. And after you've entered all 5 items and press equals, then the force number will show. If you enter the day, month, year and press equals, it will work like a normal calculator until you've entered all 5 things. Okay, so you can press equals as many times as you like as you go through. You could do day times month equals times year equals plus house number equals times zip code equals, and then it'll only show the force number at the end. Now if you continue on after that, it'll go back to being a normal calculator. So for instance, after you've entered the zip and press equals, if somebody then wants to test it out at +1 or +10 or something, it will calculate correctly from that point. So that's another little a little feature that just is more of a convincer if somebody needs to do that. Now with the different fields, there are quite a few different keywords. You'll notice that there's a little down arrow next to each of the fields, and if you click that, you'll find that there's a whole list of different reserved keywords that can be used to calculate information. So for instance, if you've got a day, a month and a year, you can calculate the zodiac. If you've got, again, day, month, year, you can do the Chinese zodiac, the age of the person, the day that they were born, how many days ago they were born, how many days it will be until their next birthday or their last birthday. You could calculate the celebrity that was born on the same day by looking at one of our custom lists. So it's kind of similar to a book test. You could enter in a zip code, and then we'd be able to calculate the city that somebody lives in, as long as the country that you're in has a numeric zip code. So unfortunately for England and Canada, where they have alphanumeric zip codes, we can't do that on a calculator. But there's pretty much any piece of information that uses a number you can use to define or derive additional information. We can probably use it in Toxic Plus. So you could choose an item here from the list and hit the use button, and it'll put it in the list. Or if there's something that you want to collect, like a random number or shoe size, and if it's not in the list, you can just type it in. But if you're going to use a keyword, it's probably a good idea to choose the keyword from the pop-up list. That way you spell it correctly. And just be aware that you don't want to add a trailing space at the end, because if you put day space, being a computer, the iPhone won't recognize day space as being a keyword. So you want to make sure you spell it correctly. Okay, so fill out as many keywords as you or fields as you like. Just remembering that you've got to enter that many into the calculator before your force number will be shown. Also, don't leave any blanks in this because it'll go through, and if there's a blank, it'll think that it's finished, and you don't want to leave any gaps as such. If you scroll down a little bit, there's also some advanced features here that allow you to send information to different other products like Provision, Cesarol's Cup, Inject, Wikitest. Not to send to Wikitest, but for different magic tricks. So these are all sort of add-on interfaces that you can buy if you're using those other products. But for the moment, all you need to understand in this QuickStart is that you fill out what information you want each person to enter in, and then once you've entered all the information and press equals, your force number will be shown. Oh, there's a couple of little extra things that I should say here. So for every one of the force slots, every 10 plus 9 special forces, you define these data fields so that the Toxic Plus knows what information is going to be entered in by the spectator. And for every one, you can have different items. So this is for the first force, number 1. And then if you use these up and down arrows, you can move to the other forces. So if we press the up arrow, we'll move to the second force. Now this one is collecting multiple birthdays. So if you had 3 spectators that were you're performing to, you could get the first one to enter the day, month and year in day 1, month 1 and year 1. You could then pass the calculator to a second person. They could enter their day, month and year, and then pass it to a third one, enter their day, month, year, press equals. At the end you'd get your force number. So here we've got 9 items, quite a lot of information, I think. And then you would get the zodiac and the age and the day since birth for all 3 of the people. So again, if you moved up to the next one, here you could have a book test where you could just enter the day and the month of 2 spectators. Now in this situation, if you just added them together, a day plus a month plus a day plus a month, you'd end up with a maximum of 86. So you could use this for something like a book test or a similar effect to, say, digital force bag, where instead of forcing an item, you could use this 86 maximum of 86 to go and look up a custom list and return the item at that number. So there's many options that you can use here to define what type of routine you want. So it's completely up to you to specify what data goes in and what data goes out for every force. So the next one, force number 4, is using this special keyword DDMM. So instead of asking somebody to enter in a day, then a month, then a year, you could get them to enter the day and the month like a serial, like a credit card expiry date type thing. And then this this special keyword with a vertical bar and a 6 will take the value they entered and go and look up the value in custom list number 6, which is a list of celebrities. So for each one of these, you could then return which celebrity was born on the day that they were born, or at least the day of the year, not necessarily the year. So for, again, if you scroll through for each one of these, you can fill out information for every single force number separately, and you can use the up and down arrow to go up and the down arrow to go back. So again, every force number has its own list of data fields. Okay, now the next step would be, if we go out of data fields and we go down to enter peak screen items, and in here we define what information you want to get out of the app. Okay, so once somebody is entered in certain information, this is the information we get to peek. We get to see in our peek screen, we get to see on the Apple Watch, or we get to see in iTHUMP via a second device or in a remote display, for instance. Okay, so for every one of the forces, you're able to define separately what information we're going to get out. Now, it's important to understand that if you don't collect the day, month and year, you can't get the zodiac, or you can't get their age. If you just get the day and the month, you can get the zodiac, but you can't get a Chinese zodiac. If you include the year, then you can get the day that they were born, their full birth date, how many days ago it was, the Chinese zodiac, or the Chinese zodiac traits, how far it is to how many days until their next birthday or their previous birthday. If you collect the zip code, you can then pick what city that they were born in. So as long as you collect the input data, you can then get the output data. And when you're peeking things, depending on your routine, you may not want to get all of the information that's available. You might just want to limit it to just their zodiac, or just their age, or who the celebrity was, and then it makes it a lot quicker and easier for you to see, instead of having a whole big screen of information. But having said that, it may be interesting for you to have a lot of information, because then, depending on the person or what's interesting, you might want to reveal different things at different times. With the earpiece, you can define what speech items are being delivered to you separately for every force. So you may find that you only want to get one thing in the earpiece, but you may want to have a lot of things on the peak screen, so you can use that either as a backup or as a secondary look to continue on and do another effect later on, using some of the information that you've collected. Okay, so in this peak screen list at the very top, it's got some controls. So what they mean is that when you're in the calculator, you can use either the equals key, the decimal point, or the 0 key to bring up your peak screen, and it's brought up by a long press on one of those keys. You can also press in the top left or right corner of the screen, so that when you're taking the calculator back, you can grab it by the top corner, peek it as you're putting it back into your pocket. And the values of 1.2 is how many seconds you have to press on that key to show the peak screen. So it's a way of making sure that the spectator's not going to accidentally find it. So I found that about 1.2 seconds is probably the best, but if you want to change those to a longer or shorter, you can. Now it's up to you also to decide which button you want to push. So I've allowed a range of buttons. So once you've decided, it's probably best you can turn off the ones that you don't that you're not going to use, and then there's not a risk that somebody will accidentally see your peak. For me, I leave the 0 and the period on. I turn off the equals because that's probably the most common used key. I turn off the top corners. I leave auto hide peak on release turned off. That way, as if you peak and you let go, it'll automatically hide. At the moment, if you peak the peak screen, you have to tap it again to make it disappear. I prefer that because then you're not holding the peak screen down, and it also allows for you to swipe the screen when you're on the peak screen to see more information, which we'll get into a bit later. The invert peak screen is for when you're using iOS 10, the grey calculator versus the black calculator. So if you're using iOS 13, which most of you will be, I'd leave that on. It gives you a black peak screen. That way when you peak, the brightness of the screen doesn't change too much. Show traits on 0 long touch. If you leave that on, you can press on the 0 key and it will go straight to the character traits for a Zodiac versus the peak screen. So it gives you an option of being able to peak different things. So this would be my preferred setup. First 2 on, next 3 off, next 2 on. You can also change the size of the font on your peak screen if you prefer to have a bigger or a smaller font. If you have a smaller font, you can get more information on the screen. If you have a bigger font, it's easier to see quickly, especially as we get older. It's hard to see. Now if you scroll down, you'll see that there's a list of items here, and this is a scrolling list, so you can scroll up and down this list. And here, for an example, I've given you quite a lot of information. So you've got the force number that's shown at the end of the routine. All fields will show you all the information that the spectator enters in, regardless of if they put it in the right place. The birth date, your age, Zodiac, Chinese Zodiac, the day of the week, the day since birth, the city if they've entered in the zip code, character traits and Chinese traits, information about the Zodiac sign so that you can see what the positive and negative traits would be for a specific star sign. So it allows you, it's like a little bit of a crib sheet, if you like, so that you can give information about their personality compared to then just releasing or just repeating back the birthday that they entered in. You might say to a Gemini that they're very chatty, but they sometimes quite happy and other times quite sad, you know, instead of just giving them back the information that they've entered. Now there's an add item line at the bottom of this list, so if you click on that, again you'll get a list of available keywords that you can have in your peak screens. So you can scroll up and down and have a look. It's quite comprehensive. I think there's most of the things that I could think of or people in our user group came up with. So just to add an extra one, we can just add this celebrity if we like, and then we'll hit the use button and that will add the celebrity into the bottom of the list. If you want, you can hit the reorder button and then drag the celebrity up so you can have it under your Zodiac or your Chinese Zodiac and save, and that will then allow you to reorder. You can use blank lines to give yourself a little bit of white space in between different blocks of information, and if you want to delete some information that you don't want to have there, you can just swipe on the item and hit the delete button. Alright, so that's the peak list, and it's probably a good idea now that we'll go into the calculator and have a look at a routine just to see how these 3 bits of information, the force number, the data fields and the peak items are utilized within the app. One last thing, just so you remember that for every one of the 4 slots, you can specify different items for every one of the peak screens. Okay, so so in this first force we have all of these items, but if you use the up and down arrow, it'll show you that the information you get for force number 2. And if you remember that for force number 2 we were getting 3 people's birthdays, so in here we have birthday 1, age 1, zodiac 1, a blank line, birthday 2, age 2, zodiac 2, a blank line, and birthday 3, age 3, zodiac 3, and then we also have character traits for the zodiac and the Chinese traits for all 3 people. So in this force we'd be able to then reveal the zodiac of all 3 spectators. For the next one, you might have different information, and so for every single force you can use the up and down arrows to specify what information we want to peek for each force individually. Okay, now that we've set up the 3 bits of information that we need to do the routine, which is the number we want to force in force numbers, we've entered the type of information we want the spectator to enter into data fields, and we've also specified what information we want to get out as far as in our peak screen or our Apple Watch, or using iTHUMP we could have a different phone show the information. Now we're ready to go into the Toxic Plus calculator and do a routine. Okay, so when we're in the peak list, use the down arrow here just to go back to force number 1. So whatever force you last used in the peak list or the data fields, that will be the current force that you're using. You can change the force number once you get into Toxic Plus, but whatever the last force you were using in any of these screens will be the current force that the next time you go into the calculator. So if you're always using force number 1, you don't change it, it'll always be on force number 1. So let's get out of the peak list. We'll close the screen using the little X at the top, and we'll get out of the settings and go back to the main menu. So there's you notice here we've got a little Facebook icon down the bottom. If you click that and join the user group, that way there's a lot of tips and tricks, and anytime we make any updates I'll announce it within that group. There's a lot of people in there that can help if you've got any questions, or I'll usually answer as soon as I see it. But if there's any questions you have or any suggestions, feel free to put it in there. It's only open to people who have the app, so just make sure you answer the questions to say that you own the app, and that way I'll add you as soon as I see it. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a direct message through Facebook. Again, if I'm awake and available, I'll answer as soon as I can. Let's go into the Toxic Plus now. If you click on that, the first time you enter in, you'll see the startup screen. So again, this is the screenshot that you took earlier. If you just click on the anywhere on the image, it will open the calculator, but it's probably best that you click on the icon so that it looks like you're actually opening the right app. So when you click on it, the first time you go in, you'll get some intro screens. It'll tell you a little bit about the use of the app. So one thing to be very aware of is once you go into the calculator, how do you get out? So if you use the AC or the clear button and press and hold on that button for 3 seconds, then it will take you back to the main menu. So you don't want the spectator to be able to get out of the calculator accidentally. So just remember that that's the way to get in and out of the app. The next screen will talk about how do we specify which force we're going to use. Because there's 19 different forces, you can use these plus minus or the percentage key to go up, cycle up or cycle down through the list of force numbers. Okay, so you press and hold on the plus minus key, and then if you tap it quickly you can move quickly through the force numbers, and if you go past it you can use the percentage to go back the other way. Down the bottom, the 3 buttons at the bottom, the equals, the decimal point and the 0, are the ways of getting into your peak screen. So by press and hold on those for more than 1.2 seconds, it will show the peak screen. And again, whichever one is you use, hopefully you turn on the switch in the peak screen window to decide which ones you use. For me, I use normally the decimal point, and I turn off the equals key. You can also use the top 2 corners on the screen, so that as you reach and take the phone back, you can hold the phone and put it away, and as you're putting it away you can see the peak screen if you like. So again, if you've turned those on, they'll be active. If you've turned them off, they won't be active. Yeah, it talks a little bit about the log file. On the main screen there is a log, so it records everything that you've done, just so that you can go back and look at it later on. And so with the log file you're able to go in and edit the log file, add additional information if you want, so that way if you're with friends and you can say that this was Johnny and this was Mary and her birthday was then, and she had a red dress and she's got a dog called Biff. So you can add extra information. You can screenshot it, you can copy and paste it into an email, so you can use it later on. It's a good way of keeping a record of who you perform the effect to. So again, make sure you join our Facebook group. It's a great way of keeping in touch and finding out tips, tricks, and knowing what changes are made. Alright, so we're into the calculator now. Just press and hold on the AC button and that'll take you back to the main menu. Just remember that that's a way to get out. And then go back into the Toxic Plus calculator. Click on the icon and straight into the app. Now, to move through the force numbers, you press and hold on the plus minus key. And here it'll show you the force number. It'll remind you of what fields you want to see, and it'll also tell you how many data items you need to enter before the force numbers there. If you press and hold on the button and then click quickly, you then cycle through the different force numbers until you get back to the beginning. If you use the percentage key, you go back the other way. Okay. Now, once you're on the force that you want, again it will show the fields that you need to enter to get to the force number. But if you hit the clear button at any time, it will zero out the calculator and you're ready to perform. So if you're in a hurry, you can set the force, hit clear, and then it'll be ready to go. So now if we enter in the information we want to do, so for this one's set up for day, month, year, house number, zip, five items. If you're in America, you'd probably have it in the other order where you'd be wanting to enter in month, day, year, so you just set up your data fields that way. So if we were to enter, say, 20 for the 20th, multiply by 10 for October, and then multiply, and then we'll enter in the year. So you can enter the year as 4 digits if you want, or if you enter the year as 2 digits, it will treat it as if the year is greater than this year, it'll assume it's a 1900 number, and if the number is less than this year, it'll assume that it's a 2000 number. So for instance, for 1990, I could either enter 1990 or just 90. So if I do 90 and I press equals, it will calculate like a normal calculator. I'm going to add in a house number, so like 24, but it could be a pin number, or it could be a random number, or just a number between 1 and 100 and used to do an effect like digital force bag, for instance. And then I'll multiply by a zip code, so like 2133 in Australia. It could be 90210 in America. So depending on your country, if you have numeric zip codes, you can enter it in. It'll look up on our server for the city, and it'll return what city matches that code. For that feature, you do need internet access. So it will send a message to our server and send back the data for you, and that just makes it easier that you don't have to have all of that information taking up space on your phone. If you don't want to use internet, you can actually copy the postcode list from our server into one of your custom lists. It's an advanced feature, but it gives you the option if you don't want to. So when we press equals, we should see our force number here, which is our mnemonica. And then to be able to peek, we can press and hold on whichever button we've enabled for our peek screen. With me, it's the decimal point, and then that will show us the peek screen here. So here you can see that we've got all fields as one of the peek items. So that will show us the day, the month, the year, the house number, and the zip, and that will display what information the spectator actually entered in the field. So if they make a mistake, by having all fields in there, it actually lets you see what they entered, and then if they didn't follow the directions, at least you've got some info that you can sort of recover from it. But if they do enter it properly, it sort of relies on you giving clear instructions of, now enter this and now press this and do multiply and at the right time. But here we've got the date of birth, the age, star sign, year of the horse, and then we've added in the celebrity. So born on the same day as Snoop Dogg, which was a rapper, and What's My Name was one of his songs. Born on a Saturday, 10,775 days ago, and the postcode was Croydon Park Enfield South, matched that postcode. Now if we swipe if we included traits or Chinese traits, you can swipe from right to left and it will show you the character traits for that star sign, and if you swipe again, it will show the Chinese traits. So that's information that might be handy for you to reveal during your routine. You can swipe back to go back, tap on the screen to go back to your calculator. Now if you press and hold on the 0 key, because we had that switch turned on in the peek screens, it'll take us straight to the traits, and then we can swipe back to get to our peek screen. Now to continue and do it again, we can just hit the clear button, and you can again type in a different information, like 10 times 6 times 03 plus 46 times 2099 equals. Get our force number again, press the peek to get our different information, can swipe to see our Chinese traits, tap to go back to the calculator. If we want to move to the second force, we can use the plus minus key to move up, and then this one we're getting I think 3 people's birthdays. So for instance here, if we did 24 times 11 times 89 plus 20 times 10 times 90 plus 10 times 6 times 03 equals, and then we get our force number, and then when we peak now we've got 3 people's birthdays. So you can see this Sagittarius, a Libra and a Gemini. Okay. Now there's special keys for doing different things. So if you're typing in a number and you make a mistake, you can hit the clear button once, and that will just remove that one item, so you can continue on and do, continue on with the correct information. If you make a boo-boo, you can swipe. I don't know if you can do this with calculator screens. I'll bring it here so you can see. But if you swipe on the calculator, it removes one digit. So that's different ways of editing, and so it's the same as a normal calculator. If you each of the keys really has a special function. So again, have a look at the instructions sheet, and it'll tell you what sort of functions they have. But one of the cool ones are that if you are doing information and they make a boo-boo, and then by the end when you press the button it doesn't actually show the force number. If you press and hold on the the division key, it will just show the current force number immediately. So if it all goes pear-shaped, you can get out of trouble just by pressing and holding on the percentage key. Alright, so that's the quick start of how to use Toxic Plus. There's a lot of other features, so have a look at the website, and hopefully you have a lot of fun with it.